Don't give up, you know it's true. You gotta do what you wanna do.
Hello, welcome to UPSC Gangsters. This is Arjunarian. I'll be taking you through the editorial analysis of the Hindu newspaper for the date 12th October. Alright, so let's get started. The first editorial heading says the architecture of choice, the nudge philosophy, and how it can be used to encourage certain outcomes. So this is again about the Nobel Prize that was awarded to Thaler for his contribution in joining human psychology with economics. So again, this is an article about that. So let's get started. Changing mindsets. Development policies become measurably more effective when combined with insights into human behavior. It's almost the same point of what we discussed in the last editorial. So bringing human behavior into the equation, the results of the policy changes will be more effective. A common refrain in India is that constructing toilets will not guarantee cleanliness and hygiene. Swachh Bharat will succeed truly if behaviors change, for which mindsets must change. In experiments conducted in some states, application of behavioral economics successfully changed the sanitation mindset. Alright, so we'll talk about the experiments that they have done. The World Bank has documented some of the pilots. One such study found that open defecation dropped 11% from very high levels after a community-led total sanitation program was combined in a few chosen villages with the standard approach of subsidies for toilet construction and information on the transmission of diseases. Alright, so remember there was 11% decrease. How? When they led a campaign, alright, for a total sanitation program for that was combined together with other villages, and they were rolling out subsidies for toilet construction and the transmission of diseases. So this actually encouraged people to actually construct toilets because they know what it is about, and at the top of it they were receiving subsidies too. Since going out in the open is partly a social norm, the researchers tried to facilitate the building of a new social norm. A technique was used in which volunteers escorted the villagers out of the field, where they put some food next to some human waste. The experiment involved watching the flies go back and forth. The villagers were nudged into collectively rejecting open defecation by making a declaration in public. The point being that to reap the benefits of sanitation, everybody has to do it together. Behaviors change measurably. So this was a practical technique that was actually shown, alright. So keeping the human waste on one side and along with the food waste or food material on the other side, and they saw how flies sit on the human waste and go to the food. So when they practically saw something like that happening, they knew that okay, oh God, we are doing something like this. And therefore, after seeing something like that practically, it's obvious that they issued an announcement saying that we will not do this anymore. Another study involved puzzling solving sessions. It helped understanding the effects of caste on classroom performance. Boys from backward classes were found to be just as good at solving puzzles as boys from the upper castes when the caste identities were not revealed. In mixed caste groups, revealing each of the boys' caste created a significant caste gap in achievements. The boys from the backward classes underperformed by 23%. This you should remember. Alright, so see how the confidence level actually goes down by actually revealing the caste to the students. So it has gone down by 23%. The behavior informed approach The policy making recognizes that there are two systems of thinking automatically and thinking analytically and deliberately. So, thinking automatically and thinking analytically and deliberatively. So these are the two systems of thinking that comes out of behavioral economics. Please note that. So next, same line. Just as any tool can be used controversially and in a way not intended by its creators, nudging is sometimes used for mishapping mindsets, behavior, or manipulation. Examples would include using stigma to deflect blame and onto individuals, such as on social media, for systemic problems. The motivator in such cases encourages herd behavior by making people think quickly. In such situations, it helps to get people to slow down their decision making, which makes them think in an analytical fashion. Alright, so how decision making can be slowed down? This is the instance how nudge can be used in a negative way, how behavioral economics can be used in a negative way. So, when you're just feeding too much of information, not giving them time to think and all that, and arrive at your own facts or whatever, the people will believe that. Alright, so like sheeps, they would also fall for it, saying okay, a lot of people agree to it, maybe it is right and all that. So decision making is actually kind of slow in that scenario, because they're not even trying to understand it more beyond a point. And when they do that, they are actually thinking analytically like machines. Alright, they're not actually considering each and every outcome or the points that is involved. An experiment from the US is instructive. People were asked for their views on controversial topics such as sanctions on Iran in distinct ways. In the first approach, people were asked why they believed what they did. It immediately made them more argumentative and polarization increased. Then, when the same people were asked to explain how they thought the sanctions work, it made them think, and the polarization and extreme views slowed down. So, understood? Even the type of questions actually influence policy making. Right, so the type in which you are actually trying to introduce your reforms and all that, the kind of target what you have, what sort of explanation you're going to give, and what sort of results you are expecting, that should be very well versed and it should be clear. Only then you'll have the right behavioral reactions from the people. Alright, so when they were asked about how they believed, what they believed about Iran, what they're doing, people were like, Iran is bad and all that. But when they asked how sanctions work, how it's gonna actually change them and all that, the answers kind of reduced. The answers that were against Iran actually kind of reduced. So this editorial is done. Moving on to the next editorial. The heading says, accountability, not armor plating. We need a debate on police reforms. So, as such, with the very title, you know that this is about police reforms, alright? The buzzword of police reform is upon us once again, with the Union Cabinet approving Rs 25,000 crore outlay for upgrading the internal security apparatus in states. So police essentially comes under the states, right? So therefore, this line has been included. So Rs 25,000 crores has been allocated by Cabinet. Alright? An umbrella scheme, modernization of police forces, has been cleared, with the government projecting this as one of the biggest moves towards police modernization in India. It is big money, especially the centre's contribution of about 75%, with the promise that gaps in police transport, weaponry, communications and forensic support among others will be met. So out of this 25,000 crores, 75% is going to be borne by the central government. Alright, so the rest obviously by the states. And this is going to include police wage gaps and transport, weaponry, communications and forensic support. Alright, all these will be upgraded. The funds are to be rolled out over the next 3 years, with the centre contributing rupees 18,636 crores and the states contributing 6,424 crores. So these are the numbers. So just know, an estimated amount. So like center is giving around 18,000 crores and the states are giving around 6,000 crores. So yeah, 6,424 crores from the state along the lines of the established police modernization model. Under the scheme, Jammu and Kashmir and northeastern states and those affected by Maoist violence are to receive special focus. You have to note this point too. So special focus being given to the Maoist affected states and also Jammu and Kashmir. Alright, so they will be given special focus with reference to Naxalism. With reference to Naxalism, the annual report of the Union Ministry of Home Affairs 2016-17 notes that there has been a reduction in violent incidents and violence-related deaths since 2013. Alarmingly, there has been a 50% increase in encounters. So the very report from the Home Ministry says that there has been a drastic reduction in the attacks, right, from the Maoists and all that. But there has been an increase of 50% in the encounters at the same time. Maybe this is because of the encounters that the violence has gone on. Maybe, who knows. At a 122% increase in the elimination of armed Maoist cadres and a larger number of arrests and arms recoveries. So 122% jump in killing the Maoist insurgents. Alright, and again almost an equal number of arms and weapons that has been recovered. In 2013-14, the Ministry of Home Affairs guidelines on modernization funds mandate that every state and centre furnish a utilization certificate for the full amount of modernization funds released early. Alright, so earlier whatever funds that were released by the central government, the states are supposed to give accounts for that, how they have spent and where they have spent and how many things were bought and all that list should be submitted to the Ministry of Home Affairs. Alright, so utilization certificate is the key word. Utilization certificate must be issued by the states, the respective states, how they utilized. Only then the current plan will go forward. The Finance Ministry stresses that unless the certificates account for the full amount of funds sanctioned, no new funds will be released. Alright, very important point. So this is a good move actually, this makes sense. So if they have not utilized the funds that has been given to them, why to release the new funds? Right, so in order to do that, they should modernize, they should have utilized the funds that were released earlier. Considering that only 14% of modernization funds were spent in 2015-16, one would advise a tempering of the excitement around the infusion of funds until the previous year's accounting is done. Alright, only 14% of modernization fund was spent. Keep it in mind, this is a very bad number, right? Only 14% of the fund released has been spent on modernization. So this gives you a view that no matter how much money is gonna be released by the government, it has to be used in the first place for the modernization to take place. So that is as of now not happening. 14% is too low a number. So not only are modernization funds underspent on average, but also only about 3% of central and state budgets are spent on policing. So note that in mind. From the budget perspective, only 3% is spent on police. Alright, so rest is spent for other things, only 3%. So you get an idea of with what kind of funds the police are actually running, right? Less than 10 states provide security of tenure to their police chief and key field officers. So remember this point as well. So less than 10 states provide security of tenure to the commissioners or the chief police officers. Only 5 states provide for independent shortlisting of candidates in the process of appointing police chiefs. Alright, only 5 states where independent appointments happen. Okay, so only 5 states where independent appointments happen, which is independent of the government involvement. So by merit and all, only 5 states select so. Everywhere else, Director General of Police are handpicked by chief ministers serving police and government officers are adjudicating members on police complaints bodies, even though these are supposed to be independent from the police department. Reform through the pathway of directives is being mauled and distorted. This cannot be ignored in the wider discourse on police reform. So this is how the editorial ends. So these are the facts that has been listed out, so do have it in mind. Alright, so then moving on to the next editorial. A catalyst to this process was the stricture that the use of nuclear arms had to be compatible with humanitarian law. This was laid down in 1996 advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice. In September, and of course you have to note this point of the 1996 advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice. Alright, how the use of nuclear arms has to be compatible with humanitarian law. So when you look into it properly, there is no humanitarian law that would actually support the use of nuclear arms. So therefore it is a crime against humanity, and that is what has been passed as a resolution unanimously by the 122 countries. Alright, so note that piece down about the 1996 legislation, the suggestion. In September, the Italian Parliament passed a resolution urging the government to explore accession to the UN agreement without contravening its obligations to NATO. A similar step by the Dutch legislature had authorized the government to participate in the treaty deliberations. These developments may not culminate in immediate ratification, but they raise the prospect that governments will be forced to heed public sentiment sooner than later. The ICAN's endeavors may pay off eventually. So Italy has actually compelled the government to adhere to the UN agreement and at the same time maintain its relations in NATO. Alright, and NATO anyway is gonna get disbanded or whatever very soon because of Trump's stance. So therefore they might be well off the nuclear arsenal building, right? So they will be adhering to the UN agreement. So similarly, the other countries, European countries, are also following suit. Maybe there won't be an immediate relief by these actions, but this is a start, and definitely there will be some affirmed action in the future, and this is why they received the Nobel Peace Prize for. Alright, so moving on to the next editorial. The title says, "The Art of the Nuclear Deal, the Trump Cliffhanger on Iran." So this is about the Iran nuclear deal that was signed by the P+1 nations, in the sense P+5+1 means the 5 permanent members of UN Security Council along with Germany and US. Alright, so all of them got together and did a deal with Iran, and I did a previous editorial on this and how there would be ramifications if US actually pulled off from the treaty, and how UN, Russia and China and other entities would step up their support for Iran, right? I was talking about it the other day, and this editorial is also very similar to that, word by word, and there are certain extra points that are there in this editorial. So therefore I'll be I'll be listing out those extra points. Alright, so rest of it is ignored obviously. So let's start. What is the Iran nuclear deal? An agreement signed between Iran and P5+1 that is the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council and Germany in 2015 that removed economic sanctions against the country after it agreed to a joint comprehensive plan of action. So joint comprehensive plan of action is the other name given to the Iran nuclear deal. Alright, so you have to note down that the P+1 along with the other countries were instrumental in signing this deal. So these are all the members who have to see whether the deal is working and make sure that Iran is adhering to whatever it signed for. This plan ensured that Iran will drastically reduce its uranium enriching capacity and levels, enriched stockpiles and centrifuges, and will allow for stringent inspection and monitoring by the international agencies. Alright, so international agencies, when they say it, is obviously IAEA. The very next line says that. The IAEA, which is International Atomic Energy Agency, certified in its latest quarterly report on August 31st, 2017 that Iran has complied with the JCPOA, that agreement, alright? And then its stocks of low enriched uranium and centrifuges for enrichment are in line with the nuclear pact. Alright, so IAEA has done the inquiry and the latest results were submitted on August. Alright, so that hereby they are saying that Iran has actually adhered to the policies to which they have been a party of, alright, to which they have agreed and signed. So next, and beyond this, ignoring all these facts, Trump is gonna end that nuclear deal. So, free from the sanctions, Iran has seen its economy bouncing back with an accelerated growth rate of 9.2% in the latest quarter. Alright, so 9.2% in a quarter is like really high. You know, our economy is going through around 5%, right? But Iran in its last quarter has seen 9.4% of growth. Alright, and because of the economic sanctions not being there, it was rather really helpful for Iran to do it. Alright, why does US President Donald Trump want to scrape it? The Republicans voted against the nuclear deal in the Congress in the run-up to it, suggesting that the deal did not do enough to wring further concessions from Iran in terms of its support to groups opposed to US, ally Israel, its military program, etc. Mr. Trump has always termed it as a bad deal, giving few specifics on how his administration thinks so. The route Mr. Trump wants to take to do so is by decertifying the deal, which he may do next week. Under US law, the administration has to certify whether Iran is complying with the deal and if it is in the country's national security interest to remain in it every 90 days. Alright, so US from its part actually is supposed to certify whether Iran is adhering to the conditions or not every 90 days. So the cycle just came recently when US was expected to certify and it did not certify it. What follows after decertification of the deal? After decertification, the US Congress will review, in a process that will take 60 days, whether it is time to reapply US sanctions on Iran that were suspended after the JCPOA was signed. With Republicans in a majority in the House and the Senate, there is possibility of this happening, but some GOP lawmakers have expressed reservations about returning to a sanctions regime. Alright, so majority is there for the Republicans, Donald Trump's party, on both the houses, and it's very likely that they will pass a resolution that would decertify the Iran nuclear deal. So it's more likely to happen, though there are a lot of people that are against it. It looks like it's gonna happen. Alright, so with this, the editorials for this date is over. I will see you with the next editorial analysis. Till then, take care.